Today is May 5th, the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. In 2018, the U.S. Senate unanimously passed a resolution to make May 5th the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. The resolution seeks to honor the memory of Hannah Harris, a Northern Cheyenne woman from Lame Deer, Montana. Hannah was last seen when she left home on July 4th of 2013. Because police did not take her disappearance seriously, her disappearance would go almost unnoticed until her body was found on the powwow grounds of the Northern Cheyenne Reservation on July 8th. She was only 21 years old and a mother to her then 10-month-old son. The resolution also seeks to commemorate the lives of missing and murdered American Indian and Alaskan Native women whose cases are documented and undocumented in public records and the media, and calls on the people of the United States and interested groups to demonstrate solidarity with the families of victims in light of those tragedies. The date of the National Day of Awareness is May 5th because May 5th is Hannah's birthday. Today, she should have turned 29 years old.
So, our guest tonight, Jaime Black, is a multidisciplinary artist of mixed Anishinaabe and European descent. Black's art practice engages in themes of memory, identity, place, and resistance, and is grounded in an understanding of the body and the land as sources of cultural and spiritual knowledge. The REDress Project she created focuses on the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women across Canada. It is an installation art project that highlights this critical issue. The REDress Project has been installed in public spaces throughout Canada and the United States as a visual reminder of the staggering number of Indigenous women who are no longer with us. It is my pleasure to welcome Jaime Black, who will open our event with a presentation about her art. Welcome, Jaime.
Hi, everybody. All right, I can't see any of you, but hello and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm coming to you from Winnipeg, Manitoba in Canada. It's right in the middle of Canada, so just in case you didn't know where that was. So it's really exciting to be with all of you. I'm not sure where you're all at, but to be connected with UCSC is really amazing. And, you know, just to be, it's just really, really amazing and powerful to connect with all of you guys through doing this work. I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for providing support for families and people kind of coming into contact with what you guys are presenting throughout you know, this Day of Remembrance for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. It's really important that we take care of each other as we do this work. It's very, very difficult to do, but I think that doing this work with the REDress Project, I've realized how really actually amazing it is that doing this work together really brings us together, and that's kind of part of the power of it. And so in spite of all the harm that, you know, colonization has brought on, all the ways in which, you know, these systems are trying to separate us, you know, through this work with the REDress Project and many other amazing visual art and other practices Indigenous women are creating, is we're really coming together. And so I just want to acknowledge how, you know, how really powerful that is, that we're all here together, gathering together to end this violence against Indigenous women and girls. I mean, I think I have 15 minutes, which I usually go on for like an hour.
Take as long as you want. Take as long as you want. That's fine.
Like,
we're excited to hear from you.
Settle in, get a cup of tea. But yeah, so I guess I can start out talking a little bit about the REDress Project, but I'd also like to take the time tonight to talk about other work that I've been doing alongside the REDress Project, because the REDress Project has been going on for 10 years now, well, 11, I guess now, actually. So at the same time as I've been doing this work with the red dresses, I've also been obviously creating other projects and working on other things as well. So I would like to share some of those things, and sort of how the Red Dress Project has sort of led me on a journey of sort of self-discovery, and also at this point really on a journey of healing and looking at what it looks like, to engage with all of the violence that we experience, all these harms. But what does it look like when we come together and we start looking at ways of healing? And I think my art practice is sort of moving in that direction at this time after going through doing this work. But yeah, so I started the Red Dress Project in 2010. And it began, I was really inspired to do the work by many, many different things. And I actually started the project about a year after my grandfather passed away, and he was Anishinaabe, and he was kind of the glue of the family. And so, I just remember leaving the hospital and he was sick, and just feeling like it was my turn. He was sort of passing the torch to me. And so it was just really, I felt that responsibility to relearn a lot of the things that have been lost in our family because of, residential schools, different things like that, where, our family didn't practice the culture, in the way that we maybe used to quite a while ago. So with him passing away, I really felt like it became my responsibility to pass that on to my family, to my son. And it was around that time that I actually came up with the Red Dress Project. And I grew up very disconnected from any Indigenous communities or people. I had my grandpa around, but that was pretty much it. We were Métis, and so we're kind of assimilated into the larger sort of, community. And so this project really became a way for me to reconnect to who I am and to that part of my family, and to really look through and carry on a lot of those teachings and value systems that my grandfather carried with him. So, but yeah, so I started this work in 2010, and it started out with, I gathered about 6 red dresses, and I just was putting them outside and kind of, sort of playing around with them and seeing what they looked like. And I was also very inspired to do this work because I had seen a large scale performance done in Bogota, Colombia, which I know I'm jumping everywhere. Just bear with me. But yeah, there was this large scale work that was done in Bogota, Colombia, and it was all with community women. So it was grandmothers, mothers, daughters, all women and women identified people in this presentation. And so what they did is they all gathered in the public square in Bogota, Colombia. There were probably 300 women involved in this. And this woman from that area, she's a theater director, so she actually kind of helped organize and create this. It was sort of like a performance, but also like a protest in this public square in Bogota. And everyone who was part of that performance had been affected by losing a loved one in their own family. So they were out there in the public square really kind of making their voices heard and making it known what their families were going through, because very similar to here, that a lot of those things are swept under the carpet and you don't hear about them in the media. You don't, families are really struggling alone. And so these women wanted to come together and do this performance to really have their voices heard and tell their story in the public square. And one of the things that they did for this performance, there were 40 women in red dresses in the public square. And so this is obviously visible to everyone who was walking by, and there were hundreds of people watching this performance happen. And these women were all in red dresses, so 40 women in red dresses in the public square, and they were playing a traditional song on the drum, and these women did a choreographed dance to the song. And then they kind of broke apart, and went running, shouting out the names of the people who were missing in their family and running around like they were searching for someone in a frantic way. It was super powerful. And they, at the end of that, they went running up to the statue in the public square. And if you can imagine this line of women in red dresses, one of them helped one woman in a red dress get to the top of the statue and stand on the top of it in her red dress. And she cried out, "Where are they?" And it's just like, oh my goodness, it was so powerful. And I've been telling that story for 10 years. And, you know, that was one of the times in sort of like my experience where it sort of clicked that we needed to bring, I really wanted to bring that energy and that power of public art to, as a way of having our voices heard to here in Canada, because there were so many things happening here that I knew were going on sort of under the carpet, that weren't, you know, publicly acknowledged unless you were experiencing them. And I really saw in that moment the power of art to allow us to have our voices heard, even if the media doesn't want to report on it, even if, you know, big institutions don't want to fund us talking about things, even, you know, we have the power to go out in public space and through our creative practice, through our voices, be heard in the here and now, and we didn't have to wait. So that was really exciting to me, and that really sparked something in me to want to bring, you know, bring these dresses into public space as a way of marking the power of Indigenous women and really being able to tell our stories. Yeah, so I don't know, where do we want to go now?
We can continue looking through your slides. So
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
there's the first one was the red dress.
Yes.
I know, I'm not sure if you can see the slides or not.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I can see them. Perfect. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so this slide we're looking at here was actually the first large scale installation that I did of the red dresses. And this was at the University of Winnipeg. And I worked with the Women and Gender Studies department on this installation. And we actually collected over 100 red dresses from the student body, and the professors that were working in the university at the time donated a lot of dresses. But also during this year, and because of this show, we did a broader call out for red dresses. And during that year, we actually received over 300 red dresses donated from all across Canada, places in Europe, the United States. People were donating dresses left and right for this project. So I think that was a really powerful part of this project, is because it allowed a space for people to show that they support the work that we're doing, that they support families, and that if given a space to show their support, that they would. And yeah, and like I said, we got so many dresses. And I guess we can go to the next slide now. Yeah, that's just a side view of that same installation at the University of Winnipeg. Yeah, okay. So yeah, so this one I called Resilience. And this was about 6 years into doing the Red Dress Project. I started thinking about, instead of the absence that we're kind of showing with the red dresses, it's like, what about the presence? Because I think those dresses, even though there's nobody in it, they are calling an energy and a spirit to them. And so there's really a presence there. And I thought about, what does it look like when we reclaim that red dress, when we go back to the spaces on the land where we feel our power, where we reconnect with our power as Indigenous women. And then around that time, I created this image, and I think it was really a pivotal image in sort of re-embodying the red dress, and just also this element of dance in this work too is really connected to how we have always used dance as a way of connecting to spirit, connecting to ourselves, and connecting to the land. And there's a power in that, and sort of a release of feeling sort of a release of feeling oppressed by the systems that we're surrounded by. And yeah, so I think that this image is really a turning point in, you know, understanding ourselves as women as not only being in these positions of sort of disenfranchisement and oppression, but also the places in which we regain our power, we reconnect to each other, we reconnect to culture, we reconnect to the land. And what does that look like in this process of healing from what we're always dealing with?
Can I ask a question while we have this image up? I was curious about whether you set up the camera and do that side of it, or if you work with a photographer for the image where you're included, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. And I'll tell you guys a funny story. I'll tell you guys a funny story. Can't tell anybody though. So what I'm wearing actually in this photo is a blanket from my bed. And I just really liked it and the way it moved, and so I brought it out to the bush with me. And so that's one funny story. But also I went out to this spot, and I've been going to this spot my whole life. It's a little bit outside of Winnipeg, and it's land I've spent lots and lots of time on, so it's feels really like home to me. But yeah, I brought the camera out there, and I was just setting it up, and then I was putting it on self time, and I was running in front of the camera doing crazy stuff for like, you know, 10 seconds and then running back to it. So
that's tough to do. Yeah.
I was so tired, you wouldn't believe it. Like I was actually like, my body was sore the day after I did it.
Yeah.
It was super funny. I bet you, like, if you're walking your dog by me or something that day, you're like, what is that crazy lady doing? But yeah, the backstory is never as, like, you know, beautiful looking as the images. But yeah, so in that case, I was just using the self timer, but I don't always do that. I sometimes have other people come with me, and it's kind of like it's a, you know, whenever whenever I'm inspired, it's like whoever's around, I'm like, hey, want to go take some pictures? I don't have like a photographer on standby all the time, and I don't always have, you know, like funding to be paying people to do stuff for me. So it's a kind of collage of what's around, sort of thing.
Yeah, photography is an amazing medium.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Before we move on to your next slide, there was a question I think we should probably ask early, which is, can you explain what Métis, the term Métis, means? That's not really common.
Oh, Métis?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's Métis. And so there's a huge amount of sort of controversy around what that term means, actually. So what happened is the government recognizes Métis, which originally, geez, I don't even know how to explain myself to you guys. I know it's who I am, but it's very controversial, and it's like everybody has a different idea of what that term means. And so, you know, one understanding of it is you're just part Indigenous and part non-Indigenous, but that's a very simple answer, and that's not, you know, and then, but these groups of people who were both European and Indigenous, mixed blood, created a full functioning culture. And so that was sort of a little bit separate from European culture, but also a little bit separate from traditional Indigenous cultures. And so there's a whole bunch of history around that here in Canada. And I myself, I'm learning it myself as I go along and talking to relatives and sort of uncovering different family stories and things like that. So I encourage you guys to, you know, if you're really interested, to do some research, because there's a lot of writing about it as well, and
Mhm.
and a lot of legislation around how the government interacts with Métis people versus how they interact with Indigenous people, and yeah, there's a lot of history there to uncover. So
Well, thank
yeah,
you for clarifying that. It is a term that's used here in the States with some tribes in the Great Lakes region, but
yes,
not really common otherwise. So I thought it was an important thing to have you
yeah,
share with the
yeah,
audience what it means.
yeah. I'm not a pureblood. That's what it means. I'm just
Fair
kidding.
enough. That's a whole nother conversation, right? That identity stuff. Yeah.
Oh my God. I know,
That
it's a
could
whole
take
other talk for sure.
years to talk about, right? So, all right. Well, so we can move on to the next slide.
Sure, yeah, that'd be great. There we are. Oh yes. Okay, cool. Yeah. So one amazing thing that's happened over the years of doing the REDress Project is communities have really taken on using the dresses as a symbol of reclamation, of a symbol of solidarity with families and women. And I feel like the dresses have almost become like warriors, and they're standing beside us and with us as we're fighting for justice. And I feel like this photo just perfectly captures that, the spirit of that. And it's really, really exciting to me to see um, the strength and the power that these dresses bring everyone who's fighting for their land and fighting for justice for women and girls across the country. And it's just so amazing to see this work just sort of grow in this way and become such a powerful marker of our sovereignty and strength as Indigenous people. We can go to the next one. Ooh, cool. Okay, well, that's me on a rock, guys. Just kidding. It is though. Yeah, so I've been doing, like I said, some more like kind of work all the time aside from the REDress Project. So this is some of my photography work. In this work, I've been thinking a lot about land and the memories and the knowledge that is held in the land. And so I've been thinking about kind of, instead of being sort of, I'm thinking about the body and the land and the connection between the body and the land, and how we can reconnect with the history of the land just by being present on that space and making that connection. So I think that in this photo, this is what I'm trying to do and kind of starting to think about. And if you can go to the next one, actually, I can kind of explain a little bit better too.
Can you tell us where you are in that photograph where you're laying down on the rock? Where is that?
Yeah, so that's in the White Shell area. It's actually quite a sacred gathering place area for Anishinaabe and Cree people from around this area. And people have been going to that place for thousands of years, and they found ancestors, like bones of people that are up to 10,000 years old in those areas. So it's a really powerful place, and people have been gathering there to go and do ceremony for thousands of years as well. And so it's really amazing to be kind of I've been working with some women in that area and learning a lot of the stories about that area. And it's just really amazing to kind of reconnect to that knowledge. And I'm thinking about also, like, us as Indigenous women, I feel like the power has been taken away from us because we've forgotten those stories about ourselves, and those connections to the land and those places where we find our power. And so for me personally, but also for the women I'm working with, and we work with groups of women as well, we're really interested in bringing that knowledge back to the women and to the communities. And so it's like women's teachings and and the history of that area and those stones and the knowledge that they hold is so important to us kind of finding our place again, our place of power, and also it kind of understanding how to move forward and what to do at this time. So I'm just in these photos really wanting to reconnect to the land, and just like that physical connection of touching the land and touching those stones. And I kind of think of the land as alive, which I guess it is, of course, but it's just, I feel like there's just so much energy there, and there's so much knowledge there, and just like making that reconnection to those places feels really powerful to me. And I'm sort of exploring in these images what that feels like, or how to kind of reconnect to those things. Yeah. Did you want to say something?
Well, I was just, I think women across the board, right, in all Indigenous cultures, certainly here in what's now the United States, so I think it's safe to make the assumption in most parts of the Americas anyway, really had significant roles in our communities. And
Yes.
and we were in, like you said, the transition and all of the things that we unlearned during the colonial our colonial experience. There is a lot of forgetting, and I think it's interesting to counter some of that. And Aurelie and I looked over your work a lot in preparation for today, and we were thinking about how Aurelie actually was really making the connection between the land and your body. And so we'll be delving into that, but it is a very profound thing to think about. I think as an Indigenous, as Indigenous women looking at the art, it probably, we're seeing things differently than others might, even other women.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, this is also new work for me. So, I mean, I feel like I've been talking about the red dresses for obviously a very long time. And so I have a lot to say, and I've gathered a lot of stories over the years. But this work it's really raw, and it's been really guided by just what I feel like I need to go do. And so I intellectualizing it is a whole other thing that I haven't quite got to yet. And I find that also, like with my work, it sort of like comes from a subconscious place. And then after 5 years, I see something new in it. After 10 years, I see something else new in it. And it teaches me things over time, as I'm ready for them. And so I think there's so much in these, and this is just kind of preliminary as well. I want to keep doing more work like this. And and so articulating it is new for me, but there's just, I know there's just so many profound, sort of mysterious things happening in these images, and also just in the action of doing these actions on the land feels really powerful to me. And it's almost like ceremony. It's just truly reconnecting with the land, like in a very real way.
And I like the way that I really appreciate that you're on the border of water and land in these particular images. That was the first thing I thought about when I saw them, and Aurelie and I talked about them. So I just wanted to mention that I noticed that. So I think Aurelie has a question for you.
Yeah. Well, just I think hearing the way you're speaking about art, and just seeing that it's a lot more profound, and even the idea of, as Indigenous women, and our artwork is going to be coded with a lot more than I think other artists. And whether or not, I think once you get there, you kind of hit the boundaries of social commentary and activism. And I was just curious if you considered yourself an artist activist or an activist artist, or, I mean, whether or not there's a difference between the two. And I understand that artists themselves can just make social commentary. And activist too is a very charged word. I think
Yeah.
just being an Indigenous woman speaking about, your lived realities and your history and things like that don't necessarily make you an activist, but simply an artist within your positionality. But I know that was a long thing that I just
I
said.
get it.
But...
No, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, no, I think that's it's something, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I resist. I don't know. I feel like I am uncomfortable being labeled, and I find that doing this kind of work, it's like, you're this, you're that. And I'm just like, just doing what I'm pulled to do, and I am exploring things that are genuinely happening and working through things organically. And so but at the same time, I'm also not afraid to call myself an activist. Like I definitely feel like my work could fall into that category, and an artist, of course. And I don't know, I mean, I kind of wish we could just do things and and explore them and allow them to live in many different kind of categories, you know what I mean? And so I think there's that to think about. And then also, like, I think there's nothing we can do that is in a vacuum from the political climate we live in, the social climate we live in. Like, our bodies are minefields for our bodies are political. Like, our existence is political. Unfortunately, like, sometimes it feels, but we're living in that. And so I think that anything that we do is sort of political in that sense.
Yeah.
I'm also curious. I mean, and for the audience, Aurelie and I worked on preparing tonight, but Aurelie is also an artist. I'm an artist, and she had some really amazing things to ask Jaime, and so we're going to just continue asking as we look at your images. And
that sounds great.
So how do you think your relationship with the landscape, with the land, has changed with all the work that you've been doing more recently? Do you think it changed before, during, or, did something happen before you started the work that made you decide to dive into the landscapes more?
Yeah.
About that?
Well, I mean, I feel like part of my connection to my grandfather was an outdoorsman. So he was outside all the time, and he was a hunter and a fisherman. And I feel like I got this real kind of love and connection to the land from him. So that's something that I feel like kind of sits in me and always has. And, my art practice is just sort of reflecting that. But at the same time, there were experiences that I had, that kind of drew me to doing this, like, for example, this work we're looking at with the clay. And, just throughout my art practice, I got to kind of work with different artists and see what kind of things they were doing. And one of the things that we did was we worked with a group of women, and we were actually able to go into the archives and the museums and different places around here that held pottery shards that were found in this area that were made by people who were here 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. So this is something we kind of did as a research art residency. And it was so impactful to be able to touch a piece of pottery that was touched by our ancestors, 10,000 years ago, and we could touch it. Like, that knowledge is there still. And throughout that project, we learned how to remake pots kind of in the likeness of how community did make pots at that time. And so it was a really powerful project. And I think that, of course, like, kind of connecting with the land already, working with clay was sort of a natural sort of progression, because it is physically working with land, right? And yeah, so I think that kind of triggered my wanting to do like work like what we're looking at here, and just really connect, like it's very literal almost. It's like connecting the body to the land, right? I was also part of a really, really amazing ceremony with Christy Belcourt and Isaac Murdoch, and at Thunderbird House here in Winnipeg, I think about 4 years ago now, but they were doing clay ceremony. And so for part of that ceremony, you get clay painted onto your body. And the way I sort of understand that is like, it's this vow you make to the land that you're on. And so it's not just like a connection, but it's an interconnection. So it's like a relationship. And I almost felt like it was like a promise, or like a marriage, where it's like, I will take care of you. If you take care of me, we will take care of each other, and we will share our knowledge, and we will pay attention to each other, like all of that stuff. And I really feel like that about the land, and I kind of always have. And so like going through that ceremony sort of like solidified that in like a really beautiful way. And so those two experiences like really kind of, definitely informed like the work that we're looking at here.
Hearing about, I guess, like your residency, that kind of, and I think also the evolution of your work, I'm curious to know about what type of art you were trained in formally, and how it does or doesn't reflect in your current work.
So I was not formally trained at all. So.
Oh, wow.
I'm a free range artist.
That's great. That's inspiring in itself.
Well, I actually really wanted to go to art school, but my family was like, "Oh, you'll never get a job as an artist." So, anyways.
They love to say that.
Yeah.
They're just trying to take care of me.
We've all heard.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually ended up taking a literature degree, which is a whole other story, but, and also didn't get me a job. So, yeah. So, but I wasn't formally trained. So, it really came from like, I mean, I've always been an artist. I don't know. I mean, I know you guys are probably in art school, so it's not, but I think, if we're artists, we're artists. And I think that, art school can help with skills training and creating community of artists around you and things like that. And that's really great and can be really beneficial. And I feel like I got kind of like my art training, if you want to call it that, just by really immersing myself in the art community in Winnipeg. And it's quite a vibrant art community. And so I knew a lot of people, and, I sat on the outskirts of every art opening, at this Indigenous art gallery that's here in Winnipeg since I was probably 20 years old. And so, just waiting and watching and, meeting people and just being interested. And so I think that those experiences definitely informed my practice.
Are there some artists that you're really inspired by, that are some of your personal favorites?
Yeah, definitely. I'm horrible at remembering names. There's so many though.
Oh, I know there are.
There's so many amazing artists. I can't even get started. But I mean, I will give a shout out to Rebecca Belmore because I have to. I don't know if you guys have heard of Rebecca Belmore. I'm sure you have. Let's hope you have. Yeah, she's a really amazing artist, and she's actually originally from a similar place to where I grew up. I grew up in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and she's from around that ish area. And so it's really interesting because when I started working at this Indigenous art gallery, I hadn't heard of her before. And I started looking at some of her work, and I
feel like I literally had drawn a sketch of like doing a similar thing like 3 years ago and been like, oh, wow, like there's just like so many interconnections in the things that we were doing and the things that we were thinking about. And so she's a really powerful, very political artist. She's done a huge piece at the Canadian Human Rights Museum. Yeah, and she's really interested in community art and very political art. And she's done pieces around MMIW too before and performances. So she's up there for me. There's this other artist named Regina Jose Galindo, who has done some really interesting, extremely political kind of public works. She did this one performance where she got a bowl full of, I'm gonna freak you guys out now. She got a bowl full of blood and she dipped her feet in it and her bare feet, and she walked and left blood footprints all the way to like the parliament or like this
Wow.
institution. It's so powerful and it's just so simple but extremely powerful, and it's almost like ceremony that doing that, like that's almost like a ritual or a ceremony of protest against what's going on, right? And so just the impact of those kind of things is just so much. Other artists, oh my god, I could go on and on.
Well, Aurelie's got a question for you.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm hearing a lot of these artists, I guess, extremely powerful and making statements. And I wanted to know, I guess, what part do you think that art plays in aiding social movements? I think, artists this could be a part of a second question too, but do things a lot different than scholars, and kind of are the key to visualizing movements. And so I wanted to know what part you think that art plays in that.
Well, I mean, as sort of like evidenced by, the REDress Project, and I don't know if you guys know about Walking with Our Sisters, Christy Belcourt's kind of, installation. And I mean, even that Regina Jose Galindo that I just mentioned, artists can just have it. I mean, I just feel like there's to be able to engage with people on an emotional level really allows artists to kind of have their voices heard in a way that's has a really big impact. And especially like when it's public art, it's accessible to more people. I think coming out of the gallery walls is a really important part of that. And I've seen lots of different arts-based kind of approaches to activism and gatherings and standing in solidarity for different movements. Artists really can lend so much to those spaces and in support of of communities working towards justice. Yeah.
So we I think there's a couple things that I'm curious about. I'm trying to think about how I want to ask this next question, but so another thing that Aurelie and I talked about when we were looking at your work online is, the physical response we had when we looked at some of your images. And Aurelie, you can probably ask about this, right? Because many of them take place outside. So Aurelie and I were like, we were surprised at the physical response we had, just looking at the pictures, like, oh, that looks like it would be so cold there.
I'm from Southern California, so I think hearing a lot of what you're saying about it almost being like ceremony answers a bit of a part of the question. But I genuinely was like, when I saw a lot of your images, I was like, she must be so cold. I grew up in Southern California my whole life, and seeing you in the elements really, yeah, like I had a physical reaction, whether or not that was the intention, but yeah, could you speak a little more to that? I understand that your relationship with the landscape is extremely powerful, and I'm sure Canada's weather is a lot more extreme than what I'm used to, but I mean, it adds to a lot of the power for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't even sort of think of that. It's just there. I guess it's like you said, it's just I'm friends with it, you know, and so I don't know. And I mean, I get cold. Yeah, for sure, I get cold, you know. But like, especially when I'm doing work like this, though, like I do get cold for sure. But I also am very focused on the intention of where I am, and so I feel like I kind of I'm able to sort of ignore it until I'm done. And then when I'm done working, I'm like, holy, ugh. Yeah. But yeah, definitely. I've definitely done some crazy, silly outside things just to get some shots and just try some things out that, but I also feel like it's just like, I don't know, being in the elements is, I don't know. It's just, there's something sacred about it. And it just feels good to me. Like, it feels good to me to be connected to that. And so, yeah. So like, I mean, I love like this image, for example, I absolutely love being underwater. Like, I love it so much. And I will jump in water anywhere, almost at any time. Like, I'm just waiting for it to get warm enough here. But yeah, I've been jumping in lakes my whole life and I love it. And I don't even mind if it's that cold.
Well, these underwater images are so beautiful. And it was interesting that Aurelia and I made the assumption the water was cold. I mean, we don't know, right? I mean, you could be anywhere. And so
it's not like turquoise, like green.
Right, but still, I mean, we don't know, right? You could be anywhere. So it was just, you know, it was interesting that was the reaction that we had, both of us separately from each other. And but when I saw this image, I thought, wow, this is so beautiful. And the white dress that we just looked at before this too. Can you talk about the dress? I mean, is that what made you, decide to work with clothing for that one?
Yeah. So this one's like so interesting because I sort of ended up working with this white dress, and I wait, let me gather myself. There's a lot to say about this actually, and I feel like it might be moving me in a certain direction, and definitely the work underwater. I really, really want to move in that direction as well, because there's just so much, I mean, there's so much controversy around water now, and our pure fresh water is under attack, right? And so I think there's like that political angle to it, but it's also, like I said, I love being in water and I love being in lakes, and I always have been my whole life. And it's almost like this return to the womb or something, where it's just like you're weightless and you're washed clean, and like the land helps you with that and heals you and lets you, walk off what you shouldn't carry anymore. And that's what I think partly this image is. This dress is sort of like a shedding of a skin, almost like a letting go, and like a washing clean, and a kind of reconnecting to that emotional self. Like, I think of the water also as an emotional self, as our emotional selves, and like the depths of that. And I think a lot of times we can feel uncomfortable in those depths, but I love it, and I just like love being immersed in it. And so there's that aspect to it. But as well with specifically with the white dress, this is in the area that I mentioned in the White Shell in Manitoba. That is the sacred site that I was talking about that people have visited for thousands of years. And I go back to that site many times a year. And I brought this dress there and I just, as we were standing there, I just decided to put it in the water, and it was very organic. I didn't plan to necessarily do this. And again, it really became something like a ceremony. And so I was giving that dress, like washing that dress in the water, and then we ended up leaving it as an offering in the tree when we left, and it's still there right now. And I also have been working with this group of women who have been telling me the story of Sky Woman. And the story of Sky Woman is that she actually came to Earth. This is the first woman on Earth. Sky Woman is the story. And she came to Earth actually on that place, at that place in the White Shell is the story, is that's where she landed. And when she came down, it was said that she was wearing a white dress. So we're thinking about that, like us women, we're thinking about Sky Woman and the teachings of Sky Woman and when she came down here, what teachings did she bring, and kind of returning to those teachings, those women's teachings. So that's another connection with this white dress.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, we can go to the next one. Someone's still there.
Yeah. Jimsy's running our slides. Yeah, there's the beautiful one of you underwater.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited, you guys. Okay, so I plan to jump in as many lakes as I can this summer. That's like my plan. As many. I'm dying to jump in a lake. But I really, really want to keep doing this underwater photography work. I'm extremely excited about it. And I think there's just so much to explore there. And I've also been thinking about the women I'm working with in this area actually want to rename the lakes to Indigenous names. And so they want to do ceremony to rename the lakes.
Wow.
I was thinking, I'm like, oh my goodness, as part of the ceremony, I want to swim across the lake. I want to like swim across the lake to raise awareness for like taking care of our lakes and the health of our lakes. And also in ceremony to like, give myself to that water as like an offering to make that connection with that water and to swim across it. So it's just, everything's gonna be underwater from now on. You can find me underwater.
It's beautiful. We have some more questions, and then we're going to move to a couple questions by that from the audience. But I don't know, Jemsy, maybe we want to just kind of keep looking at those beautiful images. Aurelie has two questions that she's been, waiting to ask, but I really want to return to this idea of ceremony and just share. I know there's quite a few artists here, and we did a beautiful project with this Mary Cesson Gallery on our campus. They invited us to take photographs of red dresses and then have commentary about it, and it's an online exhibit. So those of you that are watching tonight, you can check that out. But it's an interesting thing to think about art as ceremony, right? And I think most artists would say that when they're creating, it feels like that for them. Yeah. I know it does for me. And it's the only time, and not to seem, like dramatic, but I mean, for me, it's the only time that I'm really happy is when I'm truly just like calm and happy, and it doesn't matter what else is going on in my life. I'm able to manage it, because I'm doing something, right? And that, for me, I just wanted to share that because I think a lot of artists that are watching tonight can probably resonate with that word and using it in collaboration with creating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that kind of goes to the sort of the teaching that like, you know, the body is ceremony, the land is ceremony. That's where we got all that ceremony from. And so like you can think of it as, I mean, maybe your thoughts of ceremony or, you know, who knows what they are, but like just our daily actions are ceremony, our making and creating is ceremony, and even our interactions with each other, you know what I mean? And just because all of it is sacred.
Go
I
ahead,
guess
Rowie.
just one final question for us and for me specifically, and for audience members as well, is what advice do you have for young Native artists, for women artists, and would it be different for either or? But yeah, just maybe end it off with some advice for
Sure, I can do
potential
that.
Native artists.
Sorry, I have to walk around, you guys. I'm sorry I'm walking around. Yeah, definitely. I think, I don't know, I just follow your intuition. And as far as like creating and art making, just like whatever it is that you feel pulled to do, follow that if you can. Like if you make sure, if you can make time for it. And I know, you know, we live in a world that really wants to stamp out that reconnecting with ourselves that we get through creating. And it's a struggle. I mean, I'm a single mom, and you know, it's a struggle to find time, you know, to reconnect to that part of ourselves, that quiet part of ourselves, and maybe that spiritual part of ourselves. But we need that connection. And so, in whatever way that we can make that connection, whether it be through creativity or, you know, whatever, you know, kind of brings you to that place we're just kind of talking about, where you feel connected and whole and just at peace in the moment, that those are the things we need to move towards. And I think that goes for probably all different ways we can express ourselves. I mean, it might not be visual art, it could be anything really.
Well, we're going to dive into a few of the audience questions. This is from Jeanette, who asks about why. So we're going to circle back to the red dresses today, being you know, the Day of Remembrance. But so she's asking why red. She's just curious about the choice of color.
Yes, that's a very good question. So red, I didn't grow up with my traditional Indigenous teachings, but I know there are, you know, cultures all across the world actually that give strong meaning to the color red. And to me, it's the color of our lifeblood. It's the color, it's a really powerful color. And you know, through doing this work with the red dresses as well, I've learned so much from everyone who's kind of interacted with the dresses. I've heard many different stories from different cultures about what that color means to them. And one of the most powerful stories that I heard about it is from a Dakota woman. She's an artist that I know here in Winnipeg. And she said that red is the only color that the spirits can see. And that made so much sense to me. And, you know, when I was young, I used to do little ceremonies myself, like out in the bush, and I would bring, you know, red ribbon or red cloth or red, you know, something, and, you know, tie things or things like that. And I think it's used in ritual and ceremony in many different places. But when she said that it was the color that the spirits can see, it just made complete sense to me why, even if I didn't completely understand why I chose that color and why that was the color that was used for this work.
Great.
Thanks for the question.
We have a technical question, which is, do you work with an assistant to take the underwater photos?
So for that, like I said, it's kind of like my my general practice is kind of who's ever around. So if you're my friend, you're probably taking photos for me. part of being my friend. You become a photographer. But yeah, so actually on this project though, that you're with this image we're looking at here, I was working with a visual artist from Northern Manitoba, and we were working on a photography project together. So she's a photographer actually, and myself as well. So she actually took this photo for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, our friend Shelby Graham, who is the director of the Cessna Gallery on our campus, says, thank you for mentioning the performance artists, Regina Jose Galindo and Rebecca Belmore. Do you continue to do the REDress Project when invited, or do you have plans to install it anywhere else? And do you think of that installation as performance?
Of the REDress Project as performance, is that what she means?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely, I don't know. I mean, I'm not, like I said, university trained, so I don't spend tons of time thinking about in what, kind of what category things fall into. But I do think that the dresses themselves definitely have an animation and a life to them and a power to them. And there's also that element, like as you see in this image, of movement. So it's almost like a movement piece or a dance piece, if you want to look at it, in that way. And then am I still getting invited to do REDress projects? Was that the other question?
Yeah, that was part of it. Yes.
Yeah, so actually the work has been touring. Well, when I say touring, I actually just get invited by people, and so kind of one by one. There's no kind of overarching plan here, but many people in the States have been inviting me to put up red dresses, and so throughout the COVID times, I've been sending the dresses out, and they've been moving around to different galleries, universities, colleges over the last 6 months or a year or so in the States.
Great.
We had a question from Sarah, one of our interns, and it says, your work is known as the REDress Project, in quotes, intentionally combining the words red and dress to spell redress. And the definition of the word means to remedy or to set right an undesirable or unfair situation. What are some ways that you feel the issue of MMIWG can be remedied?
That's a good question. I mean, there's so many different ways that we need to tackle the issues that we're dealing with here. And I think, like, for myself as an artist, doing this work with the dresses is my way of trying to tackle this and trying to create safer spaces for women and girls. And so, everybody has their own different sort of specialization and their gifts that they can share, to help move us forward socially and to create safer spaces for women and girls. And so, I mean, there's policy changes that need to be happening on the government level. There's there's public awareness that needs to happen. There's just really on the ground, like, women need help getting out of unsafe situations on the day-to-day. There's housing issues. There's just so many different ways of and we need all of them. We need everybody with all their different gifts to kind of come together to try to tackle this problem. And I mean, there could be much research around, there's no one way, obviously, of erasing 200 years of colonization, right? Like, it's not going to be that easy, unfortunately, but at the same time, I think that all we can do is do something. So if all of us do something, then something will change, right? And I feel like the red dress is a perfect example of that, where, I mean, I didn't know what to do, and then I made art because that's what I know how to do. But then it, it turned into a way of really bringing people together and teaching, and and we all have different ways of kind of making change in the world that we're in.
Yeah, that's why we need more artists in the world, I think. Um, and so, I guess to wrap up tonight, Jamie, I'd like to ask if there's anything you'd like to share that we haven't asked about, or what's coming up for you, or anything you want to share with us in the remaining.
Geez, I know people always ask me what I'm up to. I'm always up to a lot of things, so I never can remember what all the things I'm up to are. Like I said, I was working with that woman around the white dress, and so we actually created the dress for Star Woman with white buckskin not too long ago, and we're hoping to work together on a sort of like a clothing making project where we create garments that sort of tell the stories, traditional stories of the people. So, and what we want to do is do photography work around that, possibly performance theater, and use those garments to tell those old stories and kind of reclaim that knowledge. So I'm excited about that.
Sounds fantastic. We do have one last question that I want to ask because it's an interesting question, which is, do you make any artwork in response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada? And did you find yourself having an artistic response to that?
I mean, I wouldn't say specifically. I feel like I learned a lot from the TRC, and I listened to Murray Sinclair speak quite a few times, and he is like an extremely, he was the, I don't know what you call it. He basically ran the TRC. He was in charge of it all. He's a super thoughtful, just a really amazing man who's very humble. And I feel like I've learned a lot of things from him, and also from survivors and hearing their stories. But I have not specifically, created work around that. No.
Okay. Well, we have reached the end of our time with you. So again, thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing about your art. And it was such a privilege. We're so honored to have had the opportunity to close our 3-day series on MMIWG with you. Really, all of us were just so excited to, we were, when we first asked about the possibility of bringing you in, it happened, it was like, what? So yeah, we the whole team is really happy you could be here. So we'll just finish up with some slides, but again, thank you for your time, and yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody who's watching.
Yep.
Whoever you are.
We'd like to acknowledge our campus partners as we wrap up our event. The UCSC Campus Advocacy Resources and Education Office, CARE, the Division of Student Affairs and Success, KZSC 88.1 FM, the Human Rights Investigations Lab for the Americas, and the Mary Porter Cezanne Gallery. The AIRC has collaborated with the Mary Porter Cezanne Gallery to host a virtual red dressed exhibit entitled In Honor of Our Sisters, inspired by Jamie's work. And you can check out the art at art.ucsc.edu/Cezanne/MMIWG, or scan the QR code on the screen with your phone's camera. And we've also sent the link to the exhibit in the chat. We also ask that you evaluate or you complete our event evaluation form, and which we'll post in the chat, and it will also be emailed to you later today. We want to ensure that our programming is serving its purpose in our community. Additionally, if you submit an evaluation form, you'll be entered to receive some MMIWG items, and recipients will be contacted via email.
If you would like to stay connected with our center, please follow us on social media at these accounts or subscribe to our newsletter. We are on Facebook at airc.ucsc and Instagram at aircucsc. And you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter by going to our official website at airc.ucsc.edu. Additionally, all events from this year's MMIWG series were recorded and will be uploaded to the AIRC's YouTube channel soon. And you can also find many other great events that we've recorded over the course of this year on our YouTube channel.
The AIRC team has created a resource guide that includes recommended readings, books, movies, organizations, and information sharing opportunities for those who wish to take a deeper dive into this human rights issue. MMIWG is a complex and involved movement that requires an understanding of settler colonialism and Indigenous knowledge. We have provided free readings in this guide in the hopes of encouraging allyship, education, and awareness. And you can use the link posted in the chat to access this guide. Today's event would not be possible without our program coordinator and in-house Zoom expert, Gemzy Ortiz, and our director, Dr. Hernandez.
And we also want to take a moment to recognize the entire AIRC and POCSC teams for their work on this year's MMIWG series. And special thanks to our MMIWG committee. They have hearts next to their photos. It's Aurelie, Mariah, and Sarah. So thanks, they put lots and lots of work into this. And Aurelie and I again extend a special thank you to our guest, Jaime Black, and to all of you for joining us. On this National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, the AIRC sends greetings and love to all of our Native sisters everywhere. So good night.
I dream of you every night. I can't sleep 'cause of you. I toss and turn, I call your name. I'm missing you. Hey oh, hey oh, hey hey oh, hey oh, la, hey ah, hey I dream of you every night. I can't sleep 'cause of you. I toss and turn, I call your name. I'm missing you. Hey oh, hey oh, hey hey oh, I toss and turn.